Hey, welcome back to the Sunday Serving Channel, where you come for the hope and the joy of the gospel. And happy June. It's beautiful summer weather. We're here by the lake. There's two boats. That brings us right to Luke 6, the story of Jesus calling his disciples. Let's read it. I figured we'd spend a bit of time reading through some of the chapters of Luke. Maybe get to the Sermon on the Mount as is told in Luke. I think maybe a year or so ago we went through the one from Matthew. But here, Luke 5. Sorry, I said Luke 6, it's Luke 5. On one occasion, while the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God. So it's interesting, just that sentence there, the crowds that came to Jesus because of all the miracles, they also came, it says here, because they knew they would hear the word of God. And that's what you come to hear, that's what we all need every day, is the word of God. Take it into our hearts. So the crowds knew it back then. They went to Jesus to hear the word of God. He was standing by the lake Gennesaret, and he saw two boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. So here we go. Fishermen's gone out of these boats too. I don't see them washing their nets anywhere. And this is a small lake, so Lake Gennesaret, the Sea of Galilee, that's a huge lake. There was a whole industry of fishing there. And here's Jesus, and he had just started his ministry. He didn't have any followers, any disciples, except for the crowds of people that were coming to hear him. So it's interesting, if we read the story and think about it. Okay, so maybe he knows these people, maybe he doesn't. It goes on, it says, getting into one of the boats, which was Simon's, he asked him to put out a little from land. And he sat down and taught the people from the boat. So he just commandeered one of the fishing boats and said, hey, take me out in the lake. And boated out in the lake with a boat and began teaching the crowd. So they must have been pressing in on the shore. And I've heard, I haven't seen it, but apparently there's a nice cove in the Sea of Galilee where if you go out in a boat and you talk, the sound projects back to the land beautifully. So Jesus was a master of physics too. He knew all about sound projection and how your voice can carry to the crowds. Of course, he didn't really need that because he could work a miracle. But there he is, out in the lake, sharing the word of God, the teachings with the crowds of people. He sat down and taught the people from the boat. I wonder what he taught them that time. That must have, maybe that's when he started teaching the same teachings that you find on the Sermon on the Mount. But it says, when he finished speaking, he said to Simon, so this guy that rowed him out in a boat, put out into the deep and let your nets out for a catch. And Simon answered, Master, we toiled all night and took nothing, but at your word I will let down the nets. So teach, say goodbye to the crowds, go farther out in the lake, throw your nets out. Simon, this guy saying, like, we tried all night, nothing's happening, it's not the right weather for fishing. Jesus says, try it. And when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, well, I've read that. And when they had done this, they enclosed a large number of fish, and their nets were breaking. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them, and they came and they filled both boats so that they began to sink. So they're out there in the deep, and his net was so full of fish. Simon and Jesus in the boat, maybe someone else, frantically waving at their buddies out there. Come on and help us. And they bring the fish into both boats and they begin to sink. Now, it doesn't really say how it went on here. When the boats began to sink, did they get a third boat to help them out or what happens? But here's what it says. It says, when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' feet, saying, depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. So Simon Peter, right away, he felt the power of God's Spirit on Jesus, on this man that had been teaching the people, who told him to go out and fill his nets. And that was Simon's reaction. And that's an interesting reaction. So if we meet Jesus, suddenly we realize, hey, this is Jesus, this is the Lord who's speaking to us, who's doing these things. He fell at his feet and said, go away, I'm not worthy. I'm a sinner. I'm a sinful man. For he and all who were with him were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. So those the other guys that must have been in the other boat there, James and John. And Jesus said to Simon, do not be afraid, for from now on you will be catching men. It's interesting how it says it in Luke here. He didn't actually give him a choice, according to this, the way it's said here in Luke. Do not be afraid. Jesus always starts with that. Don't be afraid. The angels have the same message when they come to us. Do not be afraid. Fear is a bad thing. Believe. Have faith. Look at it. See the evidence of Jesus, of the power of the Spirit, of what there needs to be done for the kingdom. Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching men. So Jesus didn't let Simon off the hook. Well, no pun intended there. Well, net. He didn't let him out of the net. He said, now on, you will be catching men. And when they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and followed him. So that was their last catch of fish, at least for the time being. They retired their boats and their nets, and they followed Jesus. And they went with him wherever he went. They learned from him. They helped spread the message. And Jesus prepared them, the disciples, to go into all the lands after that and spread this gospel of hope. And he left us with that same commission. Spread the word. Go to all the lands, baptize people, spread the hope of the gospel of forgiveness, of freedom from Jesus. And it all comes down to this. If we realize we're sinful, but we need Jesus, we need the Lord, and are we willing to drop our nets, our fishing rods, our hooks, whatever it is, and follow Jesus? That is the call to us today on this beautiful June day out by the lake here. And God bless you. Have a wonderful week, and we'll continue reading from Luke next week. So many wonderful stories of miracles, challenges of how we should live. We need to surrender our own selfish ways, and we need to follow Jesus. So God bless. Have a wonderful week. Remy and I are going to exit out here, and maybe we'll take a dip in this beautiful lake. Let's go. You coming?